Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rise and Recreate podcast, a place where stories of courage and reinvention remind us that we can recreate our lives at any moment we choose, and as many times as we choose. I'm your host, Raechel Shannie, and today I'm joined by Diana, the founder of Crowned with Diana. She is a woman of many talents who has faced immense hardship and obstacles throughout her life. Yet instead of letting those challenges define her, she has met each one with incredible courage and strength. Through resilience and heart, she has risen and recreated her life again and again. Diana, thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited to see where this conversation leads us. I'd love for you to just go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone and share a bit of what it is you do now in life before we dive into how you got here.
Okay. Thank you for having me, Raechel. I really appreciate being on the show and super excited to talk with you. And so, yeah, where I am now, I am in the second half of my life, and I live in Colorado, and I actually work for a CPA firm. So I have like all these different arenas of my life. So people look at taxes and they're like, boring. So I do business development and operations for a tax firm. I am also writing a book about addiction and navigating that within my family. And then also have just created, like you said, the founder of Crowned. And Crowned is an event, hopefully not a one-time event, but an event that I plan to do multiple times in collaboration with some other people. But it is an event for women to find their voice and know their power. And it's really for women who maybe are super shy, or they just don't know what they want that next step to be, or, they're in a marriage where they were the mom for all these years and they're like, now what do I do? Like, what's the next step? So it's really an event for women to just find where they want to be, in life right now. And like you said, that can change many times, right?
Yes, as many times as we want it to change, whenever
Yes.
we feel the pull.
Yes.
So now that you realize, in this part of your life, oh, I do have the power within myself to change, that takes a lot of cultivating to get there, to find that belief in yourself. So I'd love for you to take us on a journey back in time. Maybe when you were working a job and you felt stuck and you didn't know what was next and kind of what you were going through at that point.
Okay. Well, I do want to preface it with saying I grew up painfully shy. And so I remember like how hard it was just to get my first job. And actually I had the job in the bag. The hard part was just walking in there and talking to the guy because I was that shy. But then, and that was a restaurant. And so I ended up in the restaurant industry, and I worked at multiple different restaurants throughout the years. And at one point in time, I ended up in this restaurant, and I was working there for about 10 years. It's where I met my husband. It was an amazing seafood restaurant in the Midwest. And I remember, because I spent 10 years there, and just thinking like, what am I going to do? Is this going to be my hell on earth? Am I ever going to get out of this? And I really felt inside that I wasn't smart enough to do anything else. And I'm not saying that you don't have to be smart to wait tables, because there is a organization to it. But and it's physically hard. So, and I had 4 little kids, and I was like, I want to put them to bed at night because I worked nights. And so I just was like, I have to figure out how to do something else. So I happened upon a couple who was in a direct sales MLM sort of business, and ended up finding they had multiple products, but the ones that I was attracted to was I wanted to lose a couple pounds, and they had a weight loss product, and they had these vitamins that were powder, and I hated pills. And so I started with those 2 products, not really thinking about selling anything, but just I was attracted to those products and started using them, and they were helpful to me. And so once I learned that I liked what they did for me, I was like, I think I want to sell these. And so I made a business out of it. Well, I ended up, being really good at selling and recruiting people into the business because I believe so strongly about them. I ended up actually, I think it was really my first time public speaking, not intentionally, but because I would do the presentations for 50 people or more. And in so doing, actually, unfortunately, my husband was threatened by my newfound independence, and our marriage ended up ending in the midst of that. And maybe it would have ended anyway, but the bottom line was that was the catalyst. And so in doing so, we divorced, and I had 4 kids between 2 and 12. And I'm sitting there asking myself, how am I going to feed 4 kids between, little kids on my own? And I had this like, oh, my husband will, he'll have that, we'll switch every other weekend, and he'll provide some child support, and I'll figure it out. Well, expectations, what happens when you have expectations. So, yeah, that didn't happen. I didn't get child support, and he never wanted to see them. And I shouldn't say he didn't want to see them. He was emotionally distraught. He turned to alcohol, and he sort of fell off the face of the planet for a while. And finally, he did end up coming back around eventually, but it was devastating. They had a lot of, abandonment issues and whatnot because of it. And so I was truly a single parent. It was almost like he had died because he just wasn't there for any support, So it was very hard. And so, again, I found my first corporate job, thought corporate jobs were really cool. And then I got in one and I was like, no, they're not,
I do.
Micromanaging and all that. And then, so that was sort of like, the MLM, and then the foot into the corporate, which I didn't stay in there long. I kind of ebbed and flowed into different corporate jobs, but kind of also stayed in the restaurant industry, and I worked my ass off, like 70 hours a week sometimes, which was not great for my kids, obviously, not having a dad or mom in the picture, really. And that leads to another area that, I don't know if you want me to go there yet, but it just became really hard. And I remember crying every day, because if I thought of the next day that I actually had to drop 4 kids off to 4 different locations in the morning before I had to be to work at 7:30, 45 minutes away, I cried because it was exhausting. Yeah. So, but that was a huge catalyst in my life, was the just finally realizing that I didn't have to stay stuck in a restaurant my whole life.
I think so myself personally, and I believe a lot of people listening to this have probably experienced the same thing, and maybe even within the restaurant industry itself. I had that belief, even though I had a college degree. I was like, am I capable of doing anything else than this? Like, what else is there? And I put myself in a box that I didn't really think I could get out of. Yeah. And granted, very grateful for the restaurant industry, because whenever I've traveled and needed another job, pop right back into it. It has actually been beautiful. The issue was the belief that I created around it. And so you said yourself, you didn't think you were smart enough to do anything else. That was the belief you held. That was keeping you in a box. Yes. And it sounds like the MLM was just out of curiosity, without even knowing where it was going to lead. So before we dive into the all of the how the hell did you do that with 4 kids, what advice would you give somebody who also is in the restaurant industry right now thinking, I'm not smart enough to do something else?
This is what I always say to my kids. The world is your oyster. Like, you are smart enough, and the world is your oyster, and there's so many industries and people that need you and your knowledge, whether you have a college degree or not. We're all really great at something, right? We might not, like, someone might or might not have a college degree, and again, whether they do or not, they may be brilliant at math or English or creative, an amazing artist, right? Or there's so many businesses. One of the cool things I love about the CPA firm is I learn about all these new businesses people create. And I'm like, wow, I would have never thought of that. It's just a really cool thing to learn about, that we see new businesses pop up, and, gosh, why didn't I invent that, But so I just think we need to listen to our intuition, and just know that there is that the knowledge and the power, you're going to find it if you listen to your intuition. Listen to your gut and listen to your intuition, and be open to trying new things. That's really what it is. And just know that people want what you have. Even if you don't even know what that is yet, people want what you have.
Like, you just followed a little curious thought,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I wonder, maybe I'll try this. And then that built your confidence up. You started public speaking. That led to the next corporate job. It's the path unfolds when we're curious.
Yes.
So I think another huge part of your story that multiple women can relate to is all of a sudden one day being a single mom and having everything fall on your shoulders. And, where would you say you got the strength to overcome the emotions you personally were feeling through all of that ending to keep going?
Well, one of the things growing up with alcoholic parents, we did an intervention on my parents when I was only 15. And thankfully, my mom quit drinking, and it ultimately took my dad's life 6 years later, actually. But my mom would always quote one of the sayings that they say in 12-step programs, which is one day at a time. And I remembered that. And so every day was so hard trying to, again, work 2 jobs and raise 4 kids. And so I just would tell myself, one, just get through today, Diana. Don't think about tomorrow, which a lot of people have a hard time with because they're planners, right? And I'm not saying don't plan, but when you are that overwhelmed, sometimes it is one day at a time. And it's what got me through was living through that with that quote, really. And, ultimately trying to figure out there's got to be a light at the end of the tunnel. What is that going to be? And it could be multiple different things. And, I ended up finding, I met a guy and, we actually spent several years together, and it was great for me and my kids, and I believe him. And then a lot of changes after that. But I think, being so shy growing up, one of the things I ended up really learning and I've always held on to was I might be really scared shitless of that next step, but I did A, B, and C back there. And if I could do that, I can do this. And I realized every time I did that thing, whether it was a small thing or a really huge thing, every time it made me stronger. I was like, oh, there's that muscle again. Like I just made my, bicep another inch bigger or whatever, like it just, every time I did it, it made me stronger, and it made me fear less the next hard thing I had to do. So yeah, I just, held on to that one day at a time, and just knowing that there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, even if sometimes you don't know what that's going to be. You look for it, and when you're looking for it, it appears.
Yeah. So you just said something huge here, that you found your strength by looking through the history of your own life and realizing all of the other things you had overcome and finding your strength from that instead of focusing on the future of, I don't know, there's so many unknowns. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know how I'm doing all of this, but let me flip the switch, look back on my life and gain strength from my past.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
such a nugget that I hope everybody really, really takes away. It's similar to, I think there's a whole book that's similar. It's called The Gap and the Gain. If people want to go even deeper, really fascinating. So here you are in the midst of one day at a time. Was there a point when you felt the pressure start to alleviate a little bit and you were actually able to think of, okay, what is it that I want next?
Yes. Again, I would say multiple times. I seem to be this, I always have to have multiple different things going on in my life. I don't know what it is. It's like a woman, like women talk about multitasking. I've always got multiple different things going on. I think I just love learning new things so much. So I'm always looking at what else can I learn about. So again, I found a new partner. We were together for 6 or 7 years. And at that point in time, I was looking at a couple things, but I was midlife, and I had grown up around horses, and I was like, I don't want to wait till I'm 90 to buy a horse. I don't even know if I can ride then if I live that long. So when I turned 40, I was like, I'm buying a horse. So I bought a horse. That was one little adventure. And I was working for a nonprofit at the time, and I ended up falling into a sales job, and I did not love salespeople. That my interpretation and view of salespeople was the traditional slimy salesperson, right? And so I fell into this wine sales job actually from my restaurant work. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm a salesperson. What the hell? How did I get here? And then I realized I was already selling, and I loved what I was doing. I was in like a resort town and I knew a lot of people there. And so I just told myself, well, I could be the slimy salesperson, or I can work how I've always worked in my life with integrity and be my authentic self. And that's just who I am. And I don't know how to be anything else. And so obviously I felt I was having some success, which I was. So I just continued being that person. And that's how I sort of started my sales career. And I lost track of the question you asked me, but
Oh,
um,
that's okay.
that's, I ended up, that was my start into the sales industry. And I've been in sales and business development ever since. And so, I guess you kind of talked about the light at the end of the tunnel. So, I mean, that was sort of a light because it opened up a whole new career path, because there's so many things that you can do sales and business development in, right? I mean, I've done real estate, insurance, wine sales, and I'm probably forgetting something, but yeah, well, CPA, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So your story is such a beautiful unraveling of just keep going, and things appearing in your path.
Yeah.
And so for somebody who isn't sure what it even means to be their authentic self, like you said, that was a big factor of your success. How does someone find their authenticity?
I'm not sure how someone finds it, but how you know what that is when I talk about who I am with people, and I joke that I swear a lot and I like to laugh a lot, and I like being direct because I appreciate directness. And a lot of times people, I think they think direct as being it's being unkind. Directness isn't being unkind. It's just not beating around the bush and making people guess what it is you're trying to say or think or want, right? It's just saying it like it is, basically. And so for me, being authentic is I'm my true self. Like, I'm not going to hide that I grew up with with alcoholic parents. I am not going to hide that I have had a traumatic past and what that traumatic past is. I talk about it openly. I am not going to hide that I ended up having 3 kids who were addicts. Like, I talk about that often, even though it was a very hard time for me, and I have to swallow my emotions sometimes. I do believe that when I share my story and when others share their stories, it allows other people to open up to you, and you end up with the authentic relationship you really want with people most of the time. So when you're authentic, it allows other people to be authentic with you as well. And that's where you really end up with intimate friendships and relationships and people that you just know them because you've told your stories to each other and you're not being fake or hiding anything. And they're like, go back to the 50s. How many things did we sweep under the carpet? Sexual assault, domestic abuse. Nobody talked about any of those things because there's all this shame around it, right? Well, that shame is such bullshit. And that's one of the things I just hate in life is when people shame other people. I get very angry when people start doing that. And I'm like, you are not going to shame me. That's your bullshit that you are bringing to the table. And let's wipe that right off the table right now, because it's an ugly, sad, painful thing for anyone who's trying to shame someone. And when you are feeling all the shame yourself, it's hard for people when they have all that. And so anyone who's dealing with that should work on getting rid of it, like with therapy or whatever they can do. Because it's one of the biggest things I think in our lives that takes away from the authentic and beautiful life we could live.
This is such a beautiful reminder of being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And being vulnerable is a precursor to being authentic.
Yes.
For myself this year, an intention I set was feeling safe in my vulnerability and being able to share stories. And it is through the sharing of our stories that we might have the most shame around, where you connect with people on such a deep level, and it opens up the most beautiful conversations, because at the end of the day, we all have our shit. It doesn't matter who you are, how successful you are, everybody has their shit. And being able to speak about it without the shame It's huge. And so, you mentioned you've gone through a lot of experiencing people very close to you who you love deeply facing addiction. And I'd
Mhm.
love to go into that a little bit because I know that's something that has touched the majority of families,
Mhm. Yeah,
truly.
unfortunately, yes.
Yes. And so, for somebody right now who maybe it's themselves that are experiencing the addiction, maybe it's somebody in their family, and we know how huge shame is around this
Mhm.
topic. So,
Yes.
if you could just speak a little bit of releasing the shame of addiction, I think that would be really helpful.
Well, I used to believe that addiction, that there were gateway drugs to addiction, to whatever a person. So a lot of people felt like, alcohol or marijuana was the gateway to bigger drugs. Um, and, and so I believe the gateway drug is trauma. When we go through trauma, we self-medicate because we don't want to face the pain that we're feeling, right? We want to mute that pain somehow. So whether it's with food or exercise or drugs or alcohol or gambling or whatever it is, whatever addiction that is, you know, we're just trying to get rid of that pain, right? Or, live with it somehow. And so um I um I believe that for example, well, it is also, I will say there is also that DNA and hereditary piece, right?
Yeah.
One person could um, take a drink of alcohol and they will never become addicted in their whole life. They just won't. And then another person has a few beers and they go down that path. And so I do believe there is still that hereditary DNA piece. Now, I mean, statistically, I'm certified in a program called Family Strong, and I got certified through an organization called Addiction Policy Forum. And they do more research now versus really providing family groups or support. I mean, although they do have a great supportive website that has a lot of resources, but they cite a lot of statistics, and so statistically, if I believe the statistic used to be if a youthful person can refrain from using any sort of substances like drugs or alcohol at least before they're 21 and not try anything until they're 21, until their brain's more developed, they will have much more success of never becoming addicted to anything. Now I believe the statistic is actually 27. I don't have that in front of me, so you'd have to look it up. But so in other words, you have a much better chance of never becoming addicted to a substance like that anyway. If the older you wait till you're older to try any of that. So, so that is, one of the things I think we're starting to learn in our more evolved society now, I'd like to say. But my dad, he had the genetic gene for sure. I don't believe my mom did. I believe my mom really just sort of was like, well, if you can't beat him, join him. And it was a way
Mm-hmm.
for her to connect with my dad, which was why I believe she was able to stop pretty much just cold turkey. And my dad, it took his life. And then with my kids, I had my parents genetically as people who were addicted, my grandfather, aunts and uncles, and then actually their father was had addiction issues as well. And so and I used to tell them from the time they were young, the odds are against you. You pick up any substance like that, and it is like playing with fire. And it didn't matter how much I preached, they still turned to substances. And ultimately, I believe from trauma. And I believe it was originally from the divorce. And then actually, we moved to Colorado in 2009, and 3 weeks before we moved, their dad died. And so then unexpectedly, so another traumatic thing. And so would they have gone down that path without those two traumas? I don't know. Maybe, but I'll never know. But I do know those traumas certainly did not help them from, stopping them going down that path.
Mm-mm. And
So
it's the most easy and accessible thing to turn to.
yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, the 12 steps helped me immensely, and the group that I started going to one group that was kind of far away. So because I felt so helpless to help my kids when they were going through it. And I was driving so far, I was like, I'm going to start a group. So I actually started the group that runs in Highlands Ranch. And, I mean, when you start one, it's not like you're not reinventing the wheel. The people from the other group helped me, thankfully, and helped me with resources to start that up and everything. But really, your information goes on the Naranan was the group that I was in, and it goes on the website, and people can find you through that. And so, I think I'd like to think I mentored and helped a lot of people through the addictions that they were dealing with their families, and honestly, the whole group helped them, and the 12 steps helped them. I just put the information out there. But I do know a lot of people came to me because I was the person that I never wanted to be, which was, oh my God, at least I'm not that. So they'd be like, oh my gosh, I only have one kid using drugs. How do you do it with three? So I was the poster child. So they would come to me with like, how do you do it? And you know what how I did it
How?
again was one
One
day
day
at
at
a
a time.
time. Yep.
The power in that,
Yep.
and so many things too, whether you're going through something hard or maybe it's a different avenue and you're not going through something hard and you're just really lost at what it is that you want to do next. Tapping into yourself one day at a time and tapping into that infinite wisdom that is inside of you, it will
Hmm.
definitely help you
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful you started a community, because I've really found that just being in community helps you evolve so much faster.
Yes.
And honestly,
Absolutely.
that's the reason I started this podcast, was so people could hear
Awesome.
other people's stories
Yep.
and just realize, oh, wow, I see myself in them and they were able
Yeah.
to get through that. Like, if people
Yeah.
see themselves in you, a woman who grew up with a family of addiction, 4 children, left to be a single mother with 4 children, working 2 jobs, and still finding the strength to
Hmm.
keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had people along the years say like, how do you do it? And I was always like, well, what else am I going to do? What's my choice? I'm not going to go drink myself into oblivion, because what will that do other than like probably put me in jail and potentially kill me and make my kids even more distraught. So like that wasn't an option for me, and so I just always did the best I could. But yeah, I have been through many things in my life. Like I had mentioned, sexual assault, domestic abuse, went through horrible hospital treatments when I was 5 and left alone in the hospital, and they were physically horrible. And and then and then divorce. My mom went through cancer. I thought we were going to lose her. They gave her 6 months to live, and she miraculously survived 23 more years. And then, losing my dad at 21, and then again, an abusive marriage. And I thought, honestly, when I went through divorce, I thought that was probably the worst thing I had felt like I had gone through, second to my mom's cancer. And speaking of the one day at a time thing, I remember sitting in my kitchen one day, and I just felt like everything was so dark around me. And it was probably light outside, but everything felt so dark because I was so distraught and in such a dark place. And I remember feeling like there was this little pinpoint of light. And I sat there, and I sort of had a little bit of a different religious faith now. Like I had a more religious faith than the spiritual faith I now have. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. That's where I was, and this is where I am. And so I just remember every day sitting there and just praying that I would get through that day. And I felt like every day that little pinpoint of light got bigger, and the next day it got a little bit bigger. And I remember after about 30 days, I was like, oh my God, it's like I can see the light now. I can breathe. And so again, it's like when people are suicidal, if they say, if you can just get through those that minute or 2 minutes that you have that dark, deep depression and that pain in you, because that's how I felt. I felt so painful. I even contemplated suicide. I was in so much pain. And I had 4 little kids to take care of, but that's how much pain I was in, that I couldn't think of even their world and what would happen if I wasn't there. And so that's, a really dark place to be in. And what got me through was that one day at a time, just kept just grabbing onto that little pinpoint of light that I had and making it to the next day where it got a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger each day. And so that really is an important thing to live by.
And so when let's say when the light started getting bigger and you started to see it, from everything you just shared, I mean, you were carrying around some really heavy, dense, dark stuff from your past. And was there anything that you consciously did to help release some of that energy from your body, some of those memories?
I didn't do anything, I would say, to get rid of memories. I have done more work in the more near past, as far as like hypnosis and NLP on that. But back then, what I did do, I did make an appointment with a therapist, and the therapist, I could see she was about to admit me to a psych ward. I did not admit to her that I was pretty much suicidal, but I did tell her I didn't care if my car crashed into a tree. Um, and and I could tell she was very, very concerned. And so, her advice was, I don't care if you like, what are the things you used to enjoy? Go do those now, even if you don't enjoy them or you don't want to do them, make yourself go do them. So two things I ended up doing. Again, I grew up around horses, so I went horseback riding with my friend a couple times. And I remember the first time we went out, I was like, I don't care that I'm on a horse. I was so miserable. I could not enjoy the experience. But I do believe at the end of the ride, I could actually drink in the nature and the enjoyment of being near the horse like that, and those little things. And then another thing was, a friend had asked if I wanted to do like a tour of homes, and I loved things like that. I loved looking at I love like old Victorians and things like that. So I remember we went on the tour of homes, and I was so miserable that day, and again so depressed. And I remember at the end of it, we were sitting in this little beautiful sunroom in this old Victorian house eating sandwiches, and my friend kind of went off on me like, what is wrong with you? Why are you just, you're so miserable? And I couldn't explain because I just was in this dark place. But I do remember, like, I did enjoy that experience, even though I came off as being miserable. And years later, she actually came back to me and apologized and said she had experienced something similar, and she knew the dark place I was in, and she apologized, because you just have to get yourself out of it. And so what ended up happening was sort of like the one day at a time thing. Every time I do another experience like that, even if it was really hard to go do, and I felt like I was miserable doing it, every time I did it, just like every time you go do that hard thing, the world got lighter.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so during those one day, even if you're focusing on one day, I'm sure some fears still came up of like, oh, like, yes, I'm really trying. How did you bring yourself back to one day at a time when the fears did come up?
Well, for example, like a fear was, I had all this debt I had to pay off, and I paid off like $10,000 in a year and I lived on $100 a week and that was to feed my kids, gas, that was everything, because the rest of my check I handed over to a couple who were trying to help me pay off the debt. So they just used my money to help organize the debt payments and everything. And so there were some nights where I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids, and that was really hard. And so I guess, like, I remember I would just go to the grocery store every day, sort of like, if you live in Europe and you go to the market every day. Here you go shop for a week or so, a couple weeks at a time, right? Well, I would literally go to the grocery store every night. I'd get off of work, I'd run in there, I'd buy just what I needed for dinner. And thankfully back then, all my kids ever wanted were chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese, and all I ever ate was salad. I was on the divorce diet. I couldn't eat anyway because I was nauseous all the time. So I was like, fine, I'll eat salad. But so I think I would, get to the end of that day and exhausted. And I usually got about 4 hours of sleep a night because, again, I was working two jobs. And I just, at the end of the night, the day was over, and I would just say to myself, tomorrow's a new day, and I'm going to go to sleep now. And I'm not going to think about what's going to happen tomorrow until I wake up and I have to deal with tomorrow.
Yeah.
It was as simple as that. Like, if I started to because if I started to think about the shitstorm that felt like it was in front of me, I would start to panic. And then I was like, how is this serving me? It's not. It's making me feel crazy. So I would just, distraction is your friend. Like I would just do something to distract myself, like something with my kids, turn on a movie, whatever, but distraction is your friend in that case, for sure. Do a craft,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you can think of, but distract yourself. Go for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Right. But
Yeah.
because it's like we start to think about either the shitstorm or the future or all of the things. Your brain gets overwhelmed. You are not coherent. You are in an incoherent state. Your energy is very high and
Yes.
frantic.
Yes.
And you can't make decisions from that place.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of addictions, a lot of times it's the frantic energy and the overwhelm that people can't handle. And that is when they turn to an
Right.
addictive
Right.
substance.
Yeah.
So, in this moment, I would like to offer everyone, some other tools to use other than turning to substance when you are trying to distract yourself. Like you mentioned, going for a walk is huge. That's what has helped me the most in my life is just moving your body. Get out of the house wherever you're at and you're having that moment. Move from that physical location.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any others that you would add?
Yes, I do. And so, first of all, I have two of my boys have had and have disabilities. One of my sons is bipolar and a plethora of other things, and another one was ADD, and they both struggled highly with depression, and so that was a whole another challenge in and of itself that I had to deal with. But and so I will say yes, medicine as like I'm not a huge proponent of big pharma. However, there is a time and place for medicine. Just like if you break your arm, you're not going to go to the doctor and have them help you fix your arm, right? So if you are depressed or you have anxiety or panic attacks, call your doctor and get some help. And that is one of the things that helped me through that month of that dark time. I called my doctor and he was our family doctor, and I had gone to see him for years. And I said, I just need something to get me through the weekends. Because the weekdays I was working two jobs, but on the weekends I didn't work a lot. I mean, I did work nights at a restaurant sometimes, well, on Saturday night, but the rest of the weekend it felt like torture to me because I was just in my head all the time, right? And I was just like, I just need something, just a temporary something. And I didn't want to go on antidepressants because I had been on them before and they had helped me actually when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. But I just felt like they take a while to work and I needed something to help me today. I couldn't wait
Mm-hmm.
30 to 60 days. Because again, I was nearly suicidal and I recognized that. And so I called my doctor and I'm like, just something for me. And he gave me some Xanax or something like that and not a lot. I didn't want a lot. And I was just like, I just literally need something to get me through the weekends. And I remember for about 3 to 4 weekends taking the Xanax. Sometimes I felt a little zoned out, but it helped me just to push the walk a little further each again, that that next week the light was a little bigger and the next week the light was a little bigger. And so, yeah, I don't think that another shame thing, right? Sometimes people are ashamed to be on antidepressants or, anti-anxiety meds. I will encourage people not to have shame around that because when it is useful, we need to use it when we need it. So definitely therapy and medicines when you need them are a great thing. Big pharma,
Mm.
again, I have a lot of negative things to say about them because that's how my son initially got addicted to drugs. But again, there's a time and a place for everything, and that's for meds. There's a time and a place.
Absolutely. Earlier in your story, you mentioned, when you did find that light, that you were at a different mindset as far as religion and spirituality goes. And I'd love to just hear how that's evolved for you over this life's path.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Protestant, small town America. I'm a cheesehead from Wisconsin. So huge on Catholicism, only I wasn't Catholic, but I was Protestant. And in a small town like that was mostly Catholic, you might as well be Catholic. And so I mean, we went to Sunday school every Sunday in church every weekend, every Sunday. I got confirmed in the church. My parents didn't like shove it down our throat or anything, but they felt like that was part of their responsibility to bring us up with this knowledge of, God and what that was. And so I I ended up, I feel like, on this journey for a long time trying to figure out like how I felt about that. Um, and my sister was and is still a big Christian person. And so I would go to her with a lot of questions and things. And then and so actually then I moved to Colorado again in 2009. And so I had this kind of struggle, like I wasn't really a big church goer. I'd go a little bit and then I would quit going. And I moved to Colorado and I was like, my sister, who's the Christian one, was living here. And so she'd be like, do you want to go to this? Do you want to go to that? So I started going to the church she was going to. One night she asked me to go to this night of prayer and I was like, what do you mean? Like, is it church? And she's like, no, just do you want to come or not? And so I went, and I literally had one of those experiences that you see on TV where they pray over you and you fall over. And I was just like, what the hell? Because I don't fake stuff. I just don't. And when the guy prayed over me, my knees buckled and I remember telling myself, like, I'm not falling over. This is bullshit. So I was like, I'm not going to fall over. And then he did it again and my knees just buckled and I couldn't. Yeah. And I fell over and they covered me up with this blanket. And then I got up because I was like, now what do I do? And I went over and sat by my sister and she leaned over because there was a person sitting between us. So she goes, okay, not that I didn't ever believe in this, but she goes, if I didn't believe then, I certainly do now because I know you don't fake anything, Diana. And she was right, I don't. So I still to this day cannot tell you what that was about. And I've had some other very religious or spiritual experiences, both good and bad. Like I felt like when my kids were doing drugs, there were all these doors that opened to many evil things. And I won't go into details again, but it was a very scary time. And so anyway, as my kids were using the drugs, I was trying to save them. And my son was almost beaten to death and killed. Two guys with baseball bats beat in his skull. And he was in the ICU for 4 days with 2 brain bleeds, almost needed brain surgery, but somehow miraculously ended up not needing brain surgery. He came out of the hospital that day and asked me for $40 and my car, and I naively gave it to him. And that was the night I found out he was using heroin. So my radar was up, but I did not have proof or confirmation. I knew something was going on, but I did not know that was it. And so that night, that was the confirmation that night. And after he was beaten and almost killed and went out and used again, I realized I was working harder at saving all of them than they were at saving themselves. And I realized that I was having health issues. My youngest son, who was still in school, was having issues. And I realized I couldn't save them. They had to want to save themselves more than I wanted to save them. And so I moved out and I moved in with a friend who no one knew. And because they were getting drugs from like the Honduran cartel or something, I didn't know if they were going to come after the rest of his family. So I moved in with this friend. Again, no one knew them. I told my 3 kids they had to figure out where they were going to leave, and they weren't allowed to know where we lived. And so I would meet them out at a coffee shop or something, and I would tell them, I will always love you and I will always support you and help you in whatever way I can, but you can't know where I live. And so I moved 5 times in 2.5 years and lived with various different people until I finally felt like we were safe and no one was going to come after us. Ultimately, my son ended up in jail and I was mandated to a 4-year rehab. My daughter went through detox twice and got away from Colorado. And then my other son actually just finally went, his really dependent substance ended up being alcohol. And I just put him through rehab again a month ago. Or that was his first time in rehab, but just a month ago. So, you think it's over and it's still here, but so far he's doing well. But anyway, through all of that, there was one particular day when I had said they can't live with me. And it was my birthday, actually. I had the moving truck there. I had to have it back in so many hours, like I think 6 p.m. I had to have the moving truck back. And my sister and mom were going to come over and help me, but they went to church first. And they called me and they were like, "Do you want to go to breakfast with us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm moving today. Got to have the moving truck back by 6." I mean, first it was, "Do you want to go to church?" Then it was, "Do you want to go to breakfast?" In the meantime, while they were doing that, I got a call from my son who I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks at least. And he had been homeless, but I didn't know if he was alive or dead because I hadn't heard from him. And that was common at that time with them. And he had told me he had a place to live, but he had lied about it. And so I went into his room and realized I had to get his 10 boxes down to about one box to fit into my storage. And as I was going through his things, I kind of melted down, thinking like, I don't even know if I'm ever going to be able to give him his things because I don't know if he's going to survive this. I was so sure that one of them, with 3 addicts, one of them was going to die. And so something in me that day snapped. And my mom and my sister got back. They finally came over. And my mom, who was the kindest, sweetest, loving person, said to me, "You really should have gone to church, Diana. It was such a beautiful sermon. You really should have come there." And I snapped and I just turned to her, and she and I got along famously. And so we rarely argued or fought or anything. But that day I looked at her and I said, "Mom, fuck God and fuck the church. What kind of God lets 3 kids die? If he can move mountains, why can't he save a couple kids?" And I snapped that day. And that was when my whole religious view changed. And I went on this, like Christians talk about, the walk through the forest. And that was my walk through the forest. They often say in the 12-step program, people either find God or they lose God. Well, I felt like I lost God, but I ended up coming out the other side with this faith that is more spiritual than religious, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, my belief is, and I'm not saying that it's just where I ended up. I'm not saying it's right or wrong for anybody or me, but is that, how could a loving God allow people to go to hell, I guess, is one of my things. And I know a lot of Christians would disagree with me, but I'm not that Christian person I was anymore. And so I believe that there is a God that shows up in different ways for people. And I believe there's an afterlife, and I believe we go to that afterlife to make amends. But I feel like it's I don't have the naive faith I had. I used to believe like, oh, if I have faith, nothing bad is going to happen. I'm certainly not there anymore. And I just really believe that, we go to this afterlife and we make amends, and I don't know what happens after that, but, yeah. So
Right.
I'm in a much healthier place than I was. And I was really pissed at God for a long time, and people would say, "Oh, God can handle your anger." And I was like, but I don't want to be this angry. Like, I didn't want to be that person. And I realized probably about 10 years later that my anger really, I didn't want to direct it to my kids because I was so angry at them for going down and for putting us all through that shit storm. I was really angry with them, but I didn't want to, like, they were already fighting this huge battle. So I didn't want to put that
Mm-hmm.
on them. So I directed it toward God
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, the universe or God. So yeah.
So you said you're writing a book on all of this, right? Because just through you sharing your story here, I mean, I personally know so many people and so many families who have faced, addicts in their family. You having 3 at a time is colossal.
Mhm.
Um, how far along are you on that book? Do you have like,
I would say 3/4 of the way through. And
okay.
it's written with some humor. And it actually, I don't want to say it's based on the 12 steps because it's not based on the 12 steps, but each chapter relates to a step. And it relates to a step because A, the steps helped me through what I went through. And B, because I do believe some of the steps are antiquated and that they need to be updated. And Bill's not alive anymore, the person who created AA. However, there is a um, plethora of people that, handle the 12 step, that are in charge of all of the programs. And I just believe that it's been the same forever. And I'm sure they're like, well, it's working. Well, it does work. But here's my reasoning behind that. So one of the terms is tough love, like kick them out or whatever you need to do, get a restraining. My sister always used to be like, get a restraining order. I'm like, I felt like I was telling my kids, just go out there and die because that's what's going to happen. And what, like, as a mother, your instinct is it's built into you to protect your children. So it's against everything you feel and believe to tell them to go out and kill themselves. So I had such a hard time with that. Even though I did kick my kids out multiple times, it broke my heart every time. And so I don't think it should be tough love. I think it should be love. How about we just love them and we create strong boundaries and we create, the line in the sand, but we still love them and help them and support them in whatever way we can and encourage them to get help. Like that's what the harm reduction center does downtown. Like they don't sit, like a lot of people think, oh, they're just giving them needles and encouraging to use. No, they're not. They're trying to make it safe for them. And every single time they come in there to try to get supplies to make sure they can use safely, they encourage them to get help. So like the goal is every time they come in there, they might be one step closer to getting help. And that's basically, what when you're loving them versus tough love. And another one is rock bottom. Rock bottom for someone using alcohol, it's generally not as serious because you're usually not going to die from one time of drinking. Not that someone hasn't, they have, but it's not the norm, right? It's not the main statistic or whatever. But one time of heroin laced with fentanyl, or you haven't used heroin for 8 months and now you go back and use the same amount, you're probably going to kill yourself. And so yes, one time of heroin can kill you. And so instead of rock bottom, because that's what rock bottom could be, is rock bottom again can be, I just can't do this anymore. And rock bottom could be, I'm going to use one more time and you're dead. And so we never want to see rock bottom. So for example, when I was driving my son up to Estes Park to rehab a month and a half ago, I told him I was proud of him. And he got pissed and he said, why? I'm not going of my own accord. You're making me go. You told me either I'm homeless or I go to rehab. And so I didn't say anything to him, but in my head, I just said to myself, you're doing the right thing, Diana. You're bringing his bottom up. You're making it more painful for him to drink. So that's what I say. Bring their bottom up, but don't let them hit rock bottom. So anyway, those are two of the things I talk about in the book. And then I think there should be a last step that they don't really talk about, which is trying to figure out how you're going to get into treatment and to get them into treatment. And I'm not saying because you're going to save them, because I already said you can't save them. They have to want to be saved. But, as a parent or as whatever, if it's your sibling or it's your parent is the person using substances or a friend or whoever it is, if I believe as humans, when we know we've done everything we could to help that person, we can go to sleep at night, So you're not just, the 12 steps, a lot of people think they're going to find the answers to help their loved one there. No, it's really more about helping you keep your sanity during that tough time. But again, I do believe, and that's what the Family Strong program does. It really shows you how there's a last piece, which is let's figure out at least putting some steps into place to get our loved one into treatment. They may still say no, but it's sort of like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Well, they're never going to drink if you can't at least try to lead them there, right? So let's put a plan into place to try to at least get them help, and they can still say no, but at least we know in our heart that we did everything we could to help them. So that's what the book is about. And then ultimately, my goal is there will be a workbook that comes off of that to help families navigate addiction.
I think that is going to be very, very, very helpful. Just hearing what you've been through, honestly, just from this conversation, witnessing your strength and your resilience, it is so freaking inspirational. And, not that we should all compare stories and say, oh, well, what this person's going through, this isn't about comparing your story. It's about tapping into the strength of others, and realizing okay, we all have the strength inside of us. I can tap into my own strength to get through my own situation that is unique for me. Yes. So as this is coming to an end, do you have, whether it's, for the people who are going through addiction or experiencing it, or the people who are at a turning point in their life and they're not sure what they're going to do next, what lasting words do you have to share with those people?
Well, I created the Crowned event just for that reason. And so really, like you just said, everyone has trauma, and no one person's trauma is, we can't compare, right? And so, um, I'm telling my story because I want people to realize that, yeah, yes, I went down this road that my life was, but I don't know what it's like to lose a child. I don't know what it's like to not be able to have a baby. A lot of women want to have babies and they can't. I don't know. I've never had cancer myself. There's so many things that I know I'm not even touching on, so many things that people have been through in their lives that have brought them trauma. And I can't begin to know what they've lived through, but I know what I've lived through, and trauma is trauma. And so let's not compare. Let's just, love and support each other. And yes, you're right. The power is within us, but there's also, and this is why I'm creating the Crowned event, we're a sisterhood, right? So I do have this passion. I love both men and women, but I do have this passion for helping women because I not only was I a single mom, but I've tried to make it. I've worked at making it in the business world for years and years and years, and so unfortunately, it is a man's world, and women do have to claw their way to the top oftentimes. And there often is pay discrepancy, right? So it's like I work hard to always, and I built a group called Denver Women in Business. It's a Facebook group. There's almost 5,000 members in it. And I built it so that women could promote their business in the group. That's purely what I built it for. And there's a $2 fee to get in because it keeps out scammers. But so I built that, and actually we are going to have some upcoming networking events, and I don't have the date of them yet, but we will be having some of those. So watch the page. And then the Crowned event, date to be determined, but again, it is going to be a one-day amazing retreat where we're going to do some inner child work. We're going to do some affirmation work, some power stance work, some burning the shit that we need to leave behind, and working on the things that we can work towards. And so just really, again, finding your voice and finding like what is that. I'm not going to tell you what your next step is, but I'm going to help you find your voice and put the shit behind you so that you can find your voice in the future, so that you can find what that piece is that next step for you. So yeah.
I love this. So for the Facebook group and that event, I'll link all of that in the show notes for people to find.
Great. And just remember, we're a sisterhood, right? Those are both like the Denver Women in Business and the Crowned. It's like we're a sisterhood. So not only rely on your power, but rely on the power of your sisterhood and the support of your sisterhood.
Mm-hmm. The support and community are huge, particularly to get you through hard times, but also to inspire you towards what it is that you want to do.
Yeah, because we want to cheer you on, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Co-creation is where it's at.
Yes.
Well, Diana, thank you so much. This has been an incredibly powerful conversation. I truly admire your strength and courage and bravery and your willingness to share so openly all of the things you have been through. Truly, truly inspiring.
Thank you.
So with that, I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Well,
and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you for having me, Raechel. You're amazing.